Welcome, brave souls, to Fear File Chronicles, your one-way ticket to spine-chilling stories and terrifying tales. Tonight, we'll be diving into the darkest corners of the human mind with the story, Hallowed Ground, Part 7, penned by the twisted mind of the Vesper spell. Together, we'll explore the unexplained and face our deepest fears. But before we begin, if you enjoy trembling in terror, be sure to hit that like button. Share this video with your fellow fear fanatics and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell notification so you never miss an eerie episode. Your support truly means the world to us. So feel free to leave a comment below to join the Fear File Chronicles community. Now, without further ado, let's unravel the mysteries of the unknown together as we delve into tonight's fear-inducing story, Hallowed Ground, Part 7. Dim the lights and prepare yourself for a chilling journey into the Fear File Chronicles. Summer slipped by without me making any visible progress in my quest. My goal was to turn my deceased friend into a spirit familiar, an action that went against Persephone's wishes. It was only on a late September night that I found a hint. Genevieve and I decided to have dinner and a couple of craft beer pints at a Queen Street tavern named the Undying Rose. I'm not much of a nightlife enthusiast, but this place was calm. It boasted a beer garden that overlooked the Avalon River. We had to share a dish though. Despite its elegant name, I was convinced their primary clientele were robust, straight guys weighing over 200 pounds. What intrigued me about this place was its name and the logo, a dark purple rose. You might remember that the rose left on the ancestor's grave was also purple and seemingly immortal. Upon realizing this, I replanted the rose. To my pleasure, it took root and sprouted into a small bush. However, something started nagging at me. In the ancestors' books, I could find no reference to it despite my thorough research. Considering how detailed they were in recording their occult activities, this absence struck me as odd. I surmised it might have been acquired by a later descendant. The Undying Rose Tavern rekindled my curiosity. Fortunately, the owner was present that night. I inquired about the history and name of his establishment. He mentioned it dated back to the early 19th century, but the precise date and original proprietor were lost in the mists of time. Despite changes in ownership, the name remained the Undying Rose. I thanked him and spent the rest of the night pondering the implications. Could it be that the tavern once belonged to my friend's ancestor? And could the name refer to the rose from the graveyard? But why? Afterwards, Genevieve and I decided to spend the night at my cemetery. I had only had 2 pints over a couple of hours, and my stomach was full. I was sober enough to drive. Back home, we smoked some weed, made love, and drifted into a deep, satisfying sleep. It was indeed a pleasant night. However, during my sleep, I had a recurring dream. It was the same dream I had the first night I spent in the cemetery, and it seemed to hint at something I was missing. The ancestor, shrouded and performing a ritual to turn the cemetery into an astral nexus, and then resting at the very center. Suddenly, it dawned on me. The ancestor stood exactly where the mausoleum now stands. But the mausoleum wasn't there initially. It was constructed after the ancestor hallowed the cemetery. But for what purpose? While it ostensibly was a tribute to Hades and Persephone, I was convinced there was an ulterior motive. I awoke suddenly, just before sunrise. The epiphany I had been waiting for was finally clear in my mind. I knew what I had to do. Evie, get dressed, I instructed her, shaking her awake and hurriedly donning my clothes.
What? Why?
She asked sleepily. I need your help. Right now, I declared. You need shoes, your sunglasses, and as much protection as you can muster. Before she could probe further, I was already out the door, heading to the maintenance shed. I put on my gardening gloves, safety goggles, and picked up a pair of rusty old sledgehammers.
Wait, Samantha, stop. What are we doing?
Genevieve queried, chasing after me. We need to see what's entombed in the mausoleum, I explained, marching resolutely towards it.
Entombed in the... You mean we're smashing it open?
She queried, aghast.
But why?
I dreamt about the cemetery being hallowed again. Only this time I realized the mausoleum wasn't there initially, I explained. The occultist erected the mausoleum afterward, and I believe they had a specific reason for doing so. There's something crucial inside that tomb, and we need to discover what it is.
Hold on, baby, slow down,
she implored.
This could be dangerous. We might upset Persephone by desecrating the tomb, or it might be protected by some occult mechanism. And what about you? You love this place. Are you really willing to vandalize it?
Her words stopped me in my tracks. I paused by the mausoleum door, mulling over her argument. I have to know for sure, I replied grimly, fully aware I was echoing what my friend had said when I caught him digging up the ancestor's grave. I pushed the door open, threw off the tablecloth covering the tomb, and immediately set to work smashing it open. Genevieve and I aren't exactly ideally built for that sort of manual labor, but we pummeled the top slab of marble until it was in small enough pieces for us to remove by hand. When the tomb was finally open, we beheld a body wrapped entirely in a scarlet burial shroud embroidered with golden sigils.
What the hell? That shroud looks brand new,
Genevieve remarked.
How is that possible if it's been rotting here for 200 years?
I didn't answer. In fact, I barely registered she said anything. I was mesmerized by the pristine shroud, the implications for the body beneath it all too clear. Evie, brace yourself, I cautioned as I pulled back the shroud, revealing the perfectly preserved body of an elderly man. His skin had the exact same pale, silvery pallor as my friend. His hair, bushy with a prominent widow's peak, was just as white, along with a pointed beard and long handlebar mustache. He had a pronounced pointed nose and sunken cheeks, and his bony fingers clutched a leather-bound book and purple rose to his chest.
An incorruptible corpse, like the one you said your friend dug up?
Genevieve asked in wonder. I nodded and slowly pulled the book out of the corpse's hands. Other than being room temperature, it didn't feel like a dead body at all. I succeeded in freeing the book, and when I opened it, my eyes began to tear up with joy at what I saw on the first page. The Journal of Artaxerxes Crow, I read aloud. My voice flooded with pride, satisfaction, and relief.
Artaxerxes?
Genevieve asked in disbelief.
Wait, Crow, as in Crow, Crowley, and Chamberlain, the old financial firm on Druid Street?
Almost certainly, I said softly, though I was hardly concerned with that at the time. Evie, this is my friend's ancestor, the occultist who made the deal with Persephone and created this place. I knew it didn't make sense that he would be buried in some random grave. The first time my friend told me that, I knew it didn't make sense. He was on the right track, though. That must have been what drove him to dig up the grave.
But then, who's buried out there?
No idea. Just someone Artaxerxes sacrificed to the wisps in his place, I surmised. Genevieve, I don't know how he did it, or even exactly what he did, other than that it involves the roses and the mausoleum in some way. But somehow he cheated Persephone. He condemned every one of his descendants to a fate that he weaseled out of. The bastard.
This is unreal,
Genevieve murmured with an incredulous shake of her head. When she was finally able to pull her eyes away from the body, she saw that I had a broad grin plastered across my face.
Samantha, baby, why are you smiling?
His soul is still in there. Can't you feel it? I asked. I hadn't noticed it at first either, but I could clearly sense the presence of a soul within the corpse. He's astral projecting, but his soul is still bound to his earthly vessel, which is why he hasn't fallen into the underworld, despite being such an epic piece of shit. He's literally been evading divine justice for centuries.
So why are you smiling?
Genevieve repeated. Persephone is going to want to make Artaxerxes pay for what he did, I whispered, gesturing to her portrait. She made it very clear to me that she will not tolerate being tricked or cheated. She'll want him, and she can have him, for a price. Genevieve stared at me aghast, like I'd just gone completely insane.
You're saying you're going to ask Persephone for your friend back in exchange for this asshole?
She asked, bewildered. Not ask. Demand, I said resolutely. We'll set up wards that the elderkin can't cross, like last Halloween. And if Persephone won't agree to my terms, then she's out of luck. Genevieve took a step back, her body quaking at my proposed sacrilege.
Samantha, baby, I really don't know about this,
she murmured.
I love you, but Persephone is still the maiden goddess. Still our goddess. Forcing her hand like that seems disrespectful and dangerous. Maybe we should just let Persephone have him, and she can decide if and how to reward us.
For a moment, I was hurt. She knew how much this meant to me. And now that I finally had an ace in the hole, she just wanted me to give it up. But I knew how much her faith meant to her, and that I really was asking a lot. I understand, I said, hanging my head in resignation. And I'll understand if you don't want to have anything to do with this. But that's not going to stop me. I'm a Wiccan now too, and I do want to revere and respect all incarnations of our goddess. But there's still a humanistic streak in me that thinks standing up to a tyrannical god who could torture me for all eternity is the most righteous act I could ever do. Goddess or not, Persephone wronged a fellow human being that I called my friend. And if I can hold her accountable for that, I will. Genevieve just stood there, tears welling in her eyes. I could tell she wanted to talk me out of it, but knew that she couldn't. I could tell she wanted to tell me that she wouldn't have any part in it, but knew that she couldn't do that either. She looked at me, then at the portrait of Persephone, and then back to me.
Fuck it. The great thing about being a polytheist is that if you piss one god off, you got plenty more to choose from.
We spent the next few weeks preparing for our Halloween party. We consulted our occult tomes and readied everything we would need. Soon, Samhain was upon us. I had turned Moxley into my animal familiar as practice, and it went off without a hitch. We both became able to communicate with each other much more intuitively, even when we were apart if one of us wanted to, and he developed a very uncat-like obedience to my instructions. I left him at Genevieve's house for safety with her animal familiar, a black cat named Nightshade, both of whom were to be taken care of as part of Genevieve's estate should we not return. We could tell both of them knew something was up, and they were worried. But they obeyed our orders to stay at the house. After a heartfelt goodbye with our darling kitties, we set out for the cemetery. We had carved a large triple moon sigil into the ground with a pentagram for a full moon, and filled the lines with black salt. There were 12 jack-o'-lanterns, one for each point on the pentagram, and one to sit between the tips of each crescent moon. They weren't carved with faces though, but with carefully selected sigils and glyphs meant to ward off chthonic or ill-meaning spirits, and ensure the protection of the mother goddess and horned god. We had similar sigils drawn on our bodies or inscribed on our clothes. We both wore pentagram talismans and pointed hats, serving both as festive costumes and ceremonial attire. I had selected a long, flowing black dress for the occasion, whereas Genevieve, who cannot abide restrictive clothing, wore only a deep green mini dress. My hair was half a foot longer than it had been a year before. I hadn't cut it in all that time since I thought a witch should have long, beautiful hair, and a witch was what I was now. Within the center of the pentagram were myself, Genevieve, and the incorruptible corpse of Artaxerxes, Crow. I had brought my altar out as well, along with the addition of the jack-o'-lantern-shaped candle holder I had placed on my friend's memorial nearly a year ago. It was our lucky 13th jack-o'-lantern, and I had drawn a sigil on it as well. It was what I intended to bind my friend to, should I succeed in freeing him from the underworld. As soon as the sun set, we began our rituals, lighting the hallowed virgin candles in their hollowed pumpkins. We danced, chanted, and prayed, recited oral spells, and burned written ones in the candle flames. This went on for nearly 2 hours until dusk finally fell. When the veil was the weakest, it would be all year, and the will of the wisps began to appear over the gravestones. Persephone would now be able to come here in her astral form, and all I had to do was summon her. It is All Hallows' Eve, and the great god Pan is dead, I pontificated. I grabbed my walking stick that I had engraved with sigils and topped with a crescent moon, a string of select gemstones dangling from the upper tip. The god of the hunt and harvest has sacrificed himself to ensure the survival of his people. We thank and praise him for this sacrifice, and grieve with the mother goddess at the loss of her consort. As the horned god descends into the underworld, so too doth the maiden, so that she may take her rightful seat by Hades' side, and grant her father dispensation to be resurrected once again come spring. But before she sits upon her obsidian throne, I would like to have a word with her. I drew the invocation sigils into the dirt with my stave, and Genevieve filled it with white salt crystals. Dread Persephone, summer maiden and winter queen, heed my summons under waxing crescent, to cross the veil on this Halloween, and greet me in my presence. For a speaking of things that need bespoke, from this moment hence, thy powers do I thus invoke. Let our bargaining commence. As soon as I had finished the spell, there was a bright blue flash from behind the tree line, where the spirit portal was, and seconds later the astral form of Persephone came marching forth, the wisps reverently lowering themselves to the ground in her presence.
Persistent as ever, aren't we, Samantha?
She said as she came to a stop behind the protective wards we had made.
At least you're not trying to steal from me. All right then, I'll humor you for a moment. What little trick have you learned that you think might be worth me giving you your friend back?
No tricks. A treat, I smiled. I bent down and pulled off Artaxerxes' burial shroud. Recognize this guy? Finally, I saw that smug smile leave her face as she just stared completely dumbfounded.
That's,
she murmured. Artaxerxes grow, I finished for her. Body and soul. If I'm not mistaken, he agreed to sacrifice both of those to your wisps in exchange for your services. He cheated you, Persephone, made a fool of you, which I do recall you saying were things that you wouldn't tolerate. She attempted to cross the outer circle to seize him, but the wards held firm.
Give him to me,
she ordered, her face distorting in otherworldly rage. I'm not one of your subjects or followers, Persephone. You have no authority over me, I proclaimed. If you want Artaxerxes, it will be on my terms. She glared at me in wrath and shock, but then let out an acquiescent snicker.
All right. Fine. You win. Give me Artaxerxes, and you can have your friend as a familiar.
Not good enough, I told her. You need to forfeit your claim on every single one of Artaxerxes' descendants, and let any that are able to leave the underworld leave.
What?
She growled, an enraged expression returning to her face. Artaxerxes broke the terms of your agreement. That means the entire contract is invalid, and you no longer have any right to those souls. Release them, and you can have him, I replied.
You want me to give up 7 generations of descendants for one man? That's nearly 12 dozen souls.
My conditions are non-negotiable. Take them or leave them, I said coldly. Persephone screamed and howled, bashing at the invisible barrier that kept her at bay. I couldn't help but smirk, remembering how she had so condescendingly assured me that I had no idea what I was doing and that I would be powerless to defy her. After a minute, she managed to regain some composure, and I watched her eyes flitting back between me and Artaxerxes, trying to decide who she wanted to punish more.
State your full terms,
she said at last. You can have him if you swear, on the river Styx, to forsake your claim to all of Artaxerxes' descendants and release the blessed ones from the underworld, I answered. To give me the name of the man who died here last year and let me bind him to me as a familiar, and that neither you or anyone at your behest will ever harm or harass me or my loved ones, or trespass in my cemetery.
I swear. on the river Styx to forsake my claim on all of Artaxerxes' descendants and to release the blessed ones from the underworld.
She repeated.
To give you the name of the man who died here last year and let you bind him to yourself as a familiar, and that neither myself or anyone at my behest will ever harm or harass you or your loved ones or trespass in your cemetery. Now give him to me.
Admittedly, this was a gamble. I wasn't entirely sure if an oath sworn on the river Styx was unbreakable, but it was a risk I had to take. Genevieve and I each picked up an end of the corpse, carried him to the edge of the wards, and threw him across. Persephone caught him with superhuman strength and agility, cradling him like a baby. A baby she intended to devour. A sadistic smile spread across her face. She cast me a wayward glance, and doubt crept into my mind. Had I made a terrible mistake?
His name is Elam Crow.
She sighed.
Don't push your luck with me again, dabbler, or I swear, on the river Styx, that I'll find a way around my oath to make you pay for your insolence.
With those words, she took a single leap and was back through the portal, carrying Artaxerxes across the veil with her. I couldn't help but wonder at the physics of it all. How does one carry a physical body into the underworld? But that question wasn't my priority. I took my wand in hand and traced the sigil for Elam in the air 7 times. Elam Crow, I shouted each time the sigil appeared. Then, kneeling by my altar, I grasped the jack-o'-lantern candle holder. I, Samantha Sumner, the Hedge Witch of Heroic Woods, hereby invoke your presence and call you forth from the spirit world, I announced. I offer you this vessel as an earthly binding to anchor your soul to the material plane. I offer you protection and shelter in return for your willing fealty as a familiar spirit. If you accept, heed my summons and come serve your lady. So mote it be. I knelt there, the tiny porcelain pumpkin in my lap. With each passing second, the fear grew. Had I done something wrong? Even on Halloween in an astral nexus, was I not powerful enough to summon a spirit?
Samantha,
Genevieve said, nodding her head behind me. I spun around. A humanoid astral form stood at the edge of the circle. Its features were hazy, indistinct. I wasn't sure if it was my friend or not. I approached it, holding the candle container across the barrier. The spirit touched it. Its features immediately solidified into those of my lost friend. An instant psychic connection ignited, just like the one I had with my cat. I knew, without a doubt, this was Elam. He was now safely bound to me and free of the underworld. Shock painted his face. He never expected to see me again. He never expected to see Earth again. His gaze flickered between me, the cemetery, and the sky, before finally uttering a barely audible but sincerely grateful,
"Thank you."
Tears of joy streamed down my face as I threw my arms around him. It was an embrace more genial than anything we had shared while he was alive. I pulled him into the circle where we'd be safe until the wisps vanished at midnight. Now he too began to weep. His tears were a mix of joy, relief, gratitude, and confusion.
Miss...
Samantha, I corrected him. You can call me Samantha now. Elam.
Samantha, why would you do this for me?
He asked, bewilderment lacing his gratitude. I smirked, still somewhat baffled by everyone's surprise at my determination to save Elam from the underworld. Because you're my friend, and I really don't understand why or care that no one else seems to think that that's reason enough. I told him. You needed me and I'm just sorry that it took me a whole year. Elam half laughed, half cried at my modest self-depreciation.
A year is a hell of a lot less than the eternity I was expecting.
He assured me.
I can never repay you for this, Samantha. Thank you. Thank you.
He was at a loss for words after that. The situation was understandably overwhelming. Genevieve and I sat with him in our spell circle, taking turns to update him on the past year's happenings. All the while, the horde of wisps hovered just beyond our ward of salt and pumpkins. And so, that's my story. Looking back at it, I've come to a realization. It wasn't a horror story. Yes, parts of it were horrifying, but in the end, I won. I uncovered arcane secrets about the spirit world, developed supernatural powers, found a home in a beautiful hidden cemetery, and found love. I even bent the queen of the underworld to my will, all for a friend. The experience left me more content and confident than ever. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Before all this, I considered myself an anti-nihilist. I believed that the lack of any objective meaning to the universe was liberating. It made everyone's subjective sense of meaning equally valid. That's why the existence of literal gods was initially horrifying to me. The idea that there were objective arbiters of meaning and morality. But when one of those gods did something I found immoral, I made her undo it. Gods or not, I proved that mortals aren't mere playthings. We have some agency over our fate, and that, to me, is the opposite of horror. Divination has since revealed that Persephone did keep her word. She released Artaxerxes' descendants, including Elam's young daughter Rosemary, who ascended to the Summerland. Elam was overjoyed, as you can imagine, and he hopes to join her there one day. I hope he does too. For now, though, he serves as my faithful familiar, protecting Genevieve and me on our astral journeys and carrying out assigned tasks. He's free to come and go from the cemetery, but he's never failed to answer my summons. And, in case you were thinking it, he's always respected mine and Genevieve's privacy. As for me, I've started a new career as a part-time metaphysical counselor at Genevieve's Spiritual Wellness Center. I share my newfound expertise as a hedge witch with those who seek it. A few years ago, I wouldn't have pictured myself doing this, but it's been going well, even though I've mostly been doing it over Zoom. Working alongside Genevieve is a bonus. I never would have been able to save Elam without her. I'll forever be grateful for her guidance and love during a crucial time in my life. My life's been pretty mundane since last Halloween, but I don't expect that to last. Harriet County can be a pretty weird place, and I'm sure there are more mysteries and anomalies left to uncover. Now, I have Artaxerxes' final journal, the one filled with secrets he took to the grave. It's brimming with untapped potential. The story of how I became the Hedge Witch of Heroic Woods may be over, but it certainly won't be the last story of mine I decide is worth telling. Well, my friends, we've reached the end of tonight's chilling tale, Hallowed Ground Part 7, by the talented The Vesper's Bell. I hope you've enjoyed our descent into darkness, and that you'll carry a piece of the Fear File Chronicles with you as you drift into uneasy dreams. If our story left you shivering and shaking, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who crave a good scare, and subscribe to the Fear File Chronicles for more haunting horrors. Remember to hit the bell notification so you're always among the first to know when a new nightmare awaits. As always, we appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sharing your fears and frights with us truly means a lot, so don't be shy to engage with our sinister community. Until next time, remember to embrace the darkness, for it is within the shadows that our most terrifying stories are born. Good night, and stay scared.